Hi everybody, welcome back to Vidarbha Literary Festival. It is my pleasure and everybody on Team VLF to have you all back, especially in great spirits and good health. Before we begin this beautiful session that's lined up in front of you, I, Arushi Nayak, would like to put a little emphasis on the journey that we've had so far. So over the last 1 year, and 1.5 years actually, we've been having run-up events, which were, variety of topics and niche interests that were coming up, and authors from all over India who were ready to come and have illuminating conversations with us in Nagpur. And so today I actually wanted to take a moment of gratitude because we've come a long way since, COVID times. And I actually wanted to thank all of you who've been here multiple times in supporting VLF throughout the journey. And with run-up events especially, we went through so many variety of topics, like we touched up LGBTQIA, to banking, to food sciences, to gender, speaking about Indian tribes, and also police reforms and unparenting, which is my favorite one. So with that, there was massive influence that happened with these topics because in that journey, we learned so much about these topics and we grew as people. So with that, I would like to have our team play a little video for you to get a sense of it. Also, do not blink because you will miss a moment together. But today I can see that everybody's smiling and I love that, you all are here and I can't wait for the show to begin. So with every event that we do, we have these segments, these small segments to showcase Vidarbha talent. So with that, today we have a person who is a science graduate, a Bachelor of Education, she's an MBA of Finance and Marketing, and now she's a writer by profession. And it's a wonderful feeling for me, being a youngster, to see how destiny is certain for all of us. She's a mother of two, a wife of a cricketer, may I add. Better yet, she found her own little home in the passion of writing and creating magic with words. Please help me welcome Taranna Fazal with her book, Rosenberry's Escapades.
Thank you for the lovely introduction. So coming up to my book, my inspiration behind writing this book is my daughter Rosina, who is now 8, and she's fond of reading storybooks. I'm glad after completing my book, she loved this book and she's eagerly waiting for its sequel. I also dedicate this book to all the adventure lovers and all those young minds who have just started their journey in the world of reading. Rosenberry's Escapades is a story of a young girl, Rosina is my daughter, Rosen, who is a middle schooler, and she lives with her granny in the city of Frankfurt. Every summer vacations, she visits Ashburg, where she gets to spend some quality time with her parents. And every year her stay at Ashburg adds to many stories in her book of happy voyages. But this year it is something different. There are many mysterious events showing up, and the story is about will she be able to unravel this complex maze created in her life. Now, talking about my central character, Rosen. She's adventure-driven, inquisitive. She trusts her instincts whenever required. She's hardworking. She works really hard to get to the bottom of any mystery. And all of these and many more are all part of one word: talent. So, coming toward talent, we are all aware of the many worldly definitions of talent. But as Suresh Menon sir has mentioned in a chapter, the talent myth in his book Rahul Dravid, Timeless Steel. I have that book. I belong to at a house of cricketers, so I have that book. So I would like to read out the exact words, what he has to say. The ability to work hard, the skill to swallow disappointments and return to the fray, the cussedness needed to keep at it and excel at it are all part of the concept of talent, or have to be. By limiting the definition, we fall for the seductive arguments of pop psychology, thus doing the talented an injustice. And we ignore the mystic that is essential companion of the great performer. So coming back to my book, thank you sir for that. Now coming back to my book, I hope all the adventure lovers will go through this irrespective of the age and enjoy reading Rosenberry's Escapades. Thank you everyone.
Now, moving forward, also I would like to say that she has a time limit to talk about her book, but she took the time to engage with you all and talk about, our main author's book. So please do support her and her new book that will be outside, so you can buy it and also engage with her as well. So moving forward to what we've all been waiting for, let me introduce our moderator of the session, who is also a great example of destiny, right? He is an English professor, director, coordinator at the Research Center at Hislop College, Nagpur. He has a profound passion for theatre arts, wherein he did 150 plays or more. I'm not even sure about that, but 150 plays and more, as he says, in English, Hindi, Bengali, and Marathi. He's also a quizzer, poet, writes for academia journals, and this is something that I have to mention, that he's the most popular teacher in Nagpur by a Times of India poll. Now, let's also skim through the brilliance of our author, which has been truly a task to put in one para. He's a prominent Indian journalist, author, and a noted sports writer, a university topper in economics and political science. He has also reported World Cup since 1987. He is one of India's best-known columnists on cricket, and is writing on politics, literature, and sport, which have a global audience. He has edited one of the essays for Sachin, Genius Unplugged. Now, he's married to a sculptor, Dimpy Menon. Now, why I mention this is because I was reading one of his interviews, and she is the reason why we're all here together. So without further ado, I do not want to talk all about it. So without further ado, let's welcome Supanta Bhattacharya and our esteemed author, Suresh Menon, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You've all been very kind, and you've been exceptionally kind by saying all those wonderful things. I must thank all of you for coming here this evening. It's extremely difficult to get away, I have noticed in most places. It's extremely difficult to get away for an afternoon program like this on a day when India is playing a cricket match. So I arranged for India to take 5 wickets in the first 6 overs so that the match would get over early, or at least the interesting part of the match would get over early. So someday we must thank Rohit Sharma that all of us could meet here at this time.
Good evening, friends. When I was asked to moderate this session, I must confess that I was initially somewhat reluctant. 2 reasons. One, I have been weaned on a diet of brilliant sports writing by Suresh Menon. So it was a fanboy moment for me that, well, this Suresh Menon is coming, and I would rather watch it from the other side, without the pressure of asking him questions and conducting this interview. And the second reason is, I pride myself on my wide-ranging reading. But then I went through this book and I discovered that, this man is somebody you can only catch up with. And I didn't want to be found out. So that is the second reason I didn't want to be here in the role of a moderator. But anyway, Pawan can be pretty insistent, as you know, and he persuaded me to this session, and I hope we all have a lot of fun. A bit of information about the book, but I would request all of you to buy copies and find out for yourselves how good and how extraordinary a book this is. All right, this is a book that would fascinate readers, writers, and non-readers and non-writers alike. This book was published in 2021 by Westland Publications, Private Limited, Chennai. And this book is a compilation of essays. So there are 44 essays, and they can be read in random order. There's no kind of sequence, or there's no thematic segregation to these essays. And in these 44 essays, I found the short takes very interesting. 2 or 3 paragraph takes on various things that fascinate this I was once described as a quote-unquote ferocious reader, which obviously my college librarian thought he was paying me a compliment by using. I'm sure he meant voracious reader. But if that term ferocious reader applies to anybody, it definitely applies to Suresh sir. So those short takes I found fascinating. And the subjects range from Naipaul to Woodhouse, bookstores to Bob Dylan, literary style to ghostwriting, bad sex to unfinished books. So, sir, I just don't have words to explain how fascinating it is. And as probably you know, I'm a quiz master, and I keep collecting trivia wherever you go. And this book proved to be a treasure trove of trivia. There's so much information that you can use at quiz contests and even to impress others that it's mind-boggling. Sir, shall we start?
Of course.
Okay, sir. My first question. There's an essay in this collection on reading, and I'll quote you. You write, "To start reading at an early age, some conditions appear necessary. A childhood that is lonely and bereft of entertainment. 1. 2. A house filled with siblings where the youngest is too young or the oldest too old. 3. An absent parent or two. 4. An encouraging parent or two. 5. Early illness leading to hours alone in bed. 6. A love for lively fictional characters rather than towards the living. 7. A view of books as an escape route." How did reading begin for you as a conscious process?
Well, I think some of the above, really. I really don't have an answer to that, except to say that I realized that when I was reading, when I was young, and I was reading, I was transported to this place which was completely different from where I was. It's not that I had an unhappy childhood. I think I had a very happy childhood, which I also mentioned later, which worked against the fact that I haven't actually written a novel because I had a happy childhood. So the idea that I could inhabit these different worlds was very appealing. It was very, and I think children understand that. When they do, they understand that very early. They can inhabit a world of words, or they can inhabit a world of color and paint and, the artistic side, or they can perhaps inhabit the world of music. And this seems to be a general rule across. And you mentioned these various, conditions. I think it was Margaret Atwood who said that she was down with asthma. She had asthma most of the time, so she was in bed. Therefore, so you do get these things that I had chicken pox, like I think most of my friends, some of whom might have given it to me. And again, you have these long days. I think those days something like you had to be in bed for 2 weeks, and I wasn't particularly physically terribly knocked or anything like that, but I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed all that sort of thing. So then again, books helped. So it's a whole kind of, it's a whole combination of circumstances. And plus, my mother was a reader. She read Malayalam novels quite consistently, and there was always a stack of Malayalam novels in the house that she was reading. My dad didn't read a lot except technical stuff, but he was a great fan of Perry Mason. I don't know if anybody reads or anybody even remembers Perry Mason now, but those days, I think even when my dad was reading him, he was already a forgotten, I mean, Earl Stanley Gardner was already a forgotten writer. So dad had those books, and I used to read those books, and it used to be great fun because we had a conversational point. So it's also a way of getting closer to your parents. I think, certainly it made me feel very adult when I was young to read Perry Mason. So yeah, so a whole lot of circumstances came together to ensure that to start reading is easy. Everybody starts reading. The thing is to keep at it, to sustain that, and for that you need a certain set of circumstances.
Tell the audience a little bit about your grandfather's library.
Yes, my grandfather was someone who had a remarkable library. He was a professor. He was a professor in Colombo many years ago, and in Kerala he had a remarkable library which had all these wonderful books that the early penguins, the green color penguins, the orange colored penguins, and a whole lot of them, and for long he wouldn't let anybody touch them except me. So again, one felt like an adult, one felt that somebody was treating you like an adult. And he didn't actually read to me, or he didn't actually point to any books that I should read or anything. But just the mere fact that they existed when we went for our holidays in Kerala, just the fact that they existed and they were in this room, you sat in this room in a chair like this and you were sort of surrounded by these books. It did something to me. It sort of, as a child, it can sort of, there are two reactions to that. One is that you'll decide, I'll never read another book in my life, or you'll say, I'm going to read every single book I can lay my hands on. Luckily for me, it was the latter.
Most readers from my generation took this particular curve. We started with Enid Blyton, went on to Hardy Boys and Earl Stanley Gardner, and Richmond Crompton, William, and then finally ended up with P.G. Woodhouse. Any childhood favorites? Anybody you realized?
I think I used to love H.G. Wells. And I think The Time Machine is one of the first books I actually enjoyed. I can remember the sort of physical joy of enjoying that book. So that was a great childhood favorite. I think Jules Verne was another childhood favorite. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and unfortunately I never sustained an interest in science fiction. I think Jules Verne is probably the last science fiction writer I read. Certainly Enid Blyton later on. I went in a slightly sort of reverse order, I think. I started reading the adult books first. I read Sherlock Holmes before I read Enid Blyton. But I enjoyed Enid Blyton and all the various sort of range of stories there. I enjoyed those too. Definitely Woodhouse. Although I think I came to Woodhouse a little later. I read Woodhouse, and then I didn't read him for a long time. I think I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I ought to. I think there's also, I have a theory that there's also that you should read certain books at certain times in your life. If you read Woodhouse too early, it kind of, you need to have a certain amount of experience before you can read Woodhouse to understand the sort of subtlety, to understand the lightness of touch. So that takes a little while. I think I read Woodhouse too early. I think I read D.H. Lawrence too early. I don't think a schoolboy should be reading D.H. Lawrence, because I don't think that is really, it should be his cup of tea. But the wonderful thing was, at home, my parents had absolutely no problem with what I read. They were happy. All my various aunts and uncles were happy, because for my birthday, they didn't have to sit and think, what should we give this guy? We just give him a book token, and that's we put him in a corner and he's fine. So it helped both ways.
I remember I was once caught reading a book by this very this Bengali writer, Samaresh Basu, whose this particular book, Bibar, it had become very controversial and it was almost banned. So my mother was scandalized. And she told my father, see what your son is reading. And my father was, well, nobody ever becomes a murderer by reading books. So let him read. My second question is, now I'm coming to your book. This is your sixth book. And first non-cricketing book, non-sports book. Okay. The USP of this book, for someone who hasn't read it yet, would be the very quirky title and the equally curious subtitle. Could you please tell our audience how these came about?
Well, that's quite straightforward. The cover, the sculpture on the cover is by my wife, Dimpy, who's a leading sculptor in the country.
The sculpture is called On Thought.
Yeah, the sculpture is called On Thought. She works in bronze and she's been doing it for years and years. And this sculpture is on my, in my study. So I was looking at it every day when I was doing this book. And later when we were discussing the cover, I thought this fit in beautifully with the whole concept of what I was writing. The title also I owe to my wife because, unfortunately, well, I don't know, unfortunately or not, I'm sure others will agree with what she didn't do. All these books that I had written on cricket, she never read any of them. She's not a particularly great cricket fan. So whenever I would say, listen, I've written this book on, I don't know, Bishan Bedi, why don't you read it? Because Bishan is a very dear family friend. Bishan, read about his life story. And then she'd say something like, why don't you write something I could read? So I said, okay, then let's do that, and hence the title.
So there's a successful woman not just behind every successful man, but there's a woman behind every successful author too.
No, this woman is in front of me.
So, and the arrhythmia part of it.
Sorry?
The arrhythmia, the subtitle.
Oh, arrhythmia. See, arrhythmia is just being cute, I think, because it's reading, writing, arithmetic. That's a classic 3 R's, and I wanted something that sounded similar. But so I have a story.
The Yeats.
Yeah, Yeats, and I think John Milton, the poet. These are writers who actually had arrhythmia. So I thought, yeah, it's a kind of a connect, but it makes sense to have it in that title because it will intrigue, the readers. That was the whole idea.
I can assure you, friends, this book definitely won't give you arrhythmia. It's a certain antidote to all cardiac ailments. My next question. You are a journalist by profession and a literature connoisseur by passion. How do you manage to reconcile these two?
Well, you can be a bank clerk and a murderer. So why can't you be a journalist and a
No, my point is, for us teachers, we are literature teachers, myself, Ruta, and I'm sure there are others here. Reading is a kind of a requirement. Not that we have to read literature, but I'm sure with the kind of demands on your time, how on earth did you manage to, even with a 24/7 schedule, I wouldn't have been able to read so much as you have done.
No, I think if you're really passionate about something, you will do it. You will do it regardless. And you will find time for it. You will find, if I were a painter, for example, I'm sure I would have painted. Winston Churchill, he's a war prime minister. He also painted. So it's if you have a passion for something, you will ensure that the passion comes through. Now, for years, luckily, my passion was also my profession, to a large extent. So there was no need for a reconciliation. I think it was part of the whole.
There are some fascinating anecdotes about writers in this book. And my personal favorite is your encounter with Naipaul. Would you mind reading that section out to our audience?
Unfortunately, or rather fortunately actually, it doesn't have an index. I was keen on an index initially because I have a theory that all non-fiction books should have an index. And then I thought that if you had an index, you would just look for what you, like just now, you'll just look for Naipaul and forget about the rest. So I said, we won't have it. The voice on the phone was distinctive. Naipaul here, it said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a famous author to call up a young sports journalist. Can we meet? It remains the most startling call I have received. The word most often associated with Naipaul, then and now, has been fastidious. He was described as a cold, sneering prophet. I was prepared for such a man. The man who came out of the lift at his hotel and walked with bird-like but precise steps seemed to have an invisible wall around him. You sensed that. There was a look in his eyes that suggested he was constantly assessing the people around him and redefining his own self in relation to them. Over the next few days, we met on and off, spending time with former Naxalites, some of whom had been jailed for murder. In the evening, he would read from his red notebook and ask, have I got that right? It was all there, the descriptions, the conversations, the opinions that would later appear in A Million Mutinies Now. The fastidiousness was only in the use of language. The prophet was neither cold nor sneering. That is the Naipaul I would like to remember, the man who said, I want to capture the moment when the theoretician takes up arms. He was talking of the anti-Brahmin movement in Tamil Nadu, but there was something universal and exciting about the motivation. He came home for dinner. We had a tiny apartment in Chennai, made tinier by the front room being filled with my wife Dimpy's half-finished sculptures and material. Naipaul arrived with his companion, whom he introduced as Margaret. He wore a three-piece suit and a red tie. The night was hot and sultry, as only Chennai nights can be. Yet he kept his suit on and wanted to have the ceiling fan switched off. In the other room, our son, not yet a year old, was expressing himself loudly, perhaps complaining about the heat. Naipaul affected not to notice. He was a man of infinite curiosity. He knew the lost wax process for bronze casting, but wanted to clarify something. He knew about the food we were having, his favorite fish and idlis among the fare. He wanted to know about Robin Singh, the cricketer from Trinidad who had moved to Chennai and would play for India. Margaret was cheerful. The stories of Naipaul's cruelty to her would emerge later. The last time I met Naipaul was in an aircraft. We were among a bunch of invitees to the Jaipur Literature Festival, returning to Delhi after the year's literary Kumbh Mela. He sat in a wheelchair in front, acknowledging the greetings of those who walked past. He looked tired. His session at the festival had been upsetting. He was 82 and seemed to come and go, struggling for coherence and clearly in the wrong place at the wrong time. A younger Naipaul would have revelled in being in the wrong place at the wrong time, converting his discomfort into literature. Now he looked wretched. As I walked past him in the aircraft, greeting him one last time, he reminded me of Edward Said's description of Jean-Paul Sartre when he met the French writer. He seemed to me like a haunted version of his earlier self. I wish I hadn't seen him thus.
As a teacher, we have noticed that although books are now easier to access than ever before, over the years there has been a decline in the reading habit, especially amongst youngsters. How would you explain this paradox?
My theory is that there has not been any decline in the reading habits among youngsters. Primarily because, certainly my generation thinks that the only reading you can do is through books. But I know that, a book is only a platform, is only a way into reading. You could use anything. You could use a Kindle. You could use whatever. You could use your phone. Whatever works. So I don't think there's been a decline in reading. I think what has happened is there's been a spread into other areas of other platforms for reading, and I think publishers are doing well. It has also meant that better books are being published because I think readers have become more critical of what they read. This is my personal theory. So I think I don't worry for books. as
Social media and OTT platforms, you don't think these have affected reading as such?
yeah, if it was social media and OTT platforms today, it was television and movies earlier, it was radio before that. There's always been something else. There has always been an alternative. And maybe they have affected the reading to the extent of few books being sold. Maybe not, I'm not even sure of that. But I personally don't think that it is an issue, really.
Okay, that is quite optimistic. Now, this is the sixth book that you have written. What would you say are the easiest and the most difficult aspects of writing?
Oh, the easiest aspect, the most difficult aspect first. The most difficult aspect is sitting down. There's a lovely line by Ian McEwan, the British writer, whose only advice to a writer, and I think it's a magnificent advice, is turn up. Turn up every morning, sit at your table, write. Doesn't matter what you write. Write. Make sure you write. Every morning from this time to this time, you have to sit and write. So basically, it's a question of discipline. It is really, I can't put it better than McEwan has put it. Turn up. And I think that's the difficult part. The easy part, I think, is that once you get into the flow of writing, something you really enjoy, again, it is like anything else. It is like music, it is like playing cricket, whatever, is that you get into a kind of zone and it just flows. When you're on a good day, on a good writing day, it just flows. So that's the easy part, and we all hope that it happens day after day, but because it doesn't.
Stephen King says about what Sir said, the discipline part, put it a little more crudely, put your bum to the bloody chair. That is the discipline part. And the inspiration when it strikes, Stephen King says, it's like falling in through the page, falling into the narrative through the page. When that happens, writing becomes almost automatic. Okay, so this is a quote from your one of the essays. I'll quote, sir. Indian writing in English has been hijacked by the semi-literate, by novels that merely aspire to chick-lit, by writing that is over-explained, single-layered and underdone. Yet, and this says something about the readers, the practitioners of such writing are much fated. They are also sought out for their opinions on subjects beyond their ken, presumably on the assumption that if you are capable of writing a bad novel, you must be an authority on nuclear disarmament or economic theory. I can think of at least 2 or 3 writers that come instantly to mind. Prima facie, this sounds rather controversial and deliberately provocative. How would you justify it?
Well, I am cynical about a certain kind of successful writer. Because I think more than literary skill, marketing skill has got them where they have. Many of them, and you know the names, and I'm not getting into those. And I have nothing. I have personally no problems with that. Marketing is as good a reason for people to get people to read as anything else. So that works for me too. But the idea that some of the more fated novelists in India, for example, are people who cannot put 2 sentences together, that is a bit worrying. And therefore, they have imitators who can't put 1 sentence together. And down the line, half a sentence, quarter sentence, down the line, there are people who can't write.
For me, some of the most delightful passages in this book, and something I could readily identify with, are the joys of book browsing in bookstores and chatting up informed booksellers. Would you kindly tell our readers a bit more about this? Shanbag is somebody even I have met in Bombay.
So you know what I'm talking about. Well, I don't know how many of you know Bangalore very well, but the one street that everybody knows in Bangalore seems to be Brigade Road. So Brigade Road is this kind of a street, shopping sort of a street, and there's a road which is just off it called Church Street. Now, in the old days, when I was in school and college, Church Street was famous for, I think, a couple of restaurants and a center which sold drugs, not pharmaceutical drugs, but whatever, yeah, the bad kind. That's right. And it was sort of, one of those things that nobody spoke about. But then, of course, it got gentrified, and it became more and more stylish, and better restaurants came in, and better grade of shops came in, and the drugs went out, and that sort of thing. And now, it is the finest book street in India. You will not find a better street of bookstores in India and almost anywhere else in the world. Because in the old days, Charing Cross in London was this huge book street which everybody talked about. Gotham in New York was. But they've all gone. There are, I think, about 2.5 bookstores left in Charing Cross. And that life is gone. That society is gone. Whereas in Bangalore, you have in that small stretch of land, a small stretch of road, you've got about 7 or 8 extremely good bookstores. They're second-hand bookstores which also sell new books. They automatically give everybody, the first guy who walks in, any customer who walks in gets a 20% reduction on books. And if you buy a whole lot, so you get your 20% plus a greater reduction at the end of, I have no idea how they make ends meet. But it's a delight. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to browse, to buy books. You can go in without the slightest intention of buying books, and you come out with a whole bag full of books. And the thing about second-hand books is, and I have a weakness for this, is that in a new bookstore, you can find the book that you want. But it takes a second-hand bookstore to find a book that you don't want. And that is why you come back with bagfuls of books.
Serendipity.
Serendipity is an important part of book browsing. Yeah, Shanbag, for example, this is in the old days, before this current sort of blossoming of, that's an interesting word, because the first store that came there was called Blossom, of the Church Street bookstores. Shanbag was the kind of man that every book lover loved. In a city, Bangalore those days was a city, I would guess a little like Nagpur is today, very refined, very, small place, everybody knew, virtually everybody knew everybody, they were kind, they were polite, they had time for one another. There was a lot of grace. And in a city like that, Shanbag was not only the epitome of all of this, but he also gave you the impression that he was Bangalore. I mean, certainly to schoolboys and girls, I mean, like we were those days. And you could walk into his store and you could pick up a couple of books. He would tell you what books to buy if you needed any help. Or he'd just leave you alone, which is the way I liked it. And if you didn't have money, he didn't take money. He had this completely, books were going, I mean, the books shelves were there and they were piled. Nobody else could take the books because they were piled in such a way, if you touched a book here, the entire thing would collapse. So Shanbag had to come and do that. And you could see the man's love for books. And he communicated this he attracted my generation of schoolboys and girls in Bangalore to book reading. A lot of us who are today reading and writing books owe a lot to the fact that he was there, ready, accessible, kind, convenient, And I think a city needs that kind of a bookstore. A city needs a bookstore that it can identify with, which is the epicenter of, the word I keep coming back to is kindness. And I think that's missing from a lot of places in the big cities now. And Shanbag had it. And all of us of my generation at that time, are certainly grateful to the fact that he was there and he guided us those days.
I mean, 30 years after you bought Being and Nothingness, he remembered.
Yeah, exactly. I bought a book when I was in school. Now, this shows you the kind of stuck-up person I was in school. I bought a book called, well, I think the word I'm looking for is pompous. This shows you the kind of pompous person I was in school. I bought a book called Being and Nothing by Jean-Paul Sartre. I don't think even Jean-Paul Sartre's wife and mother have read that book. It's an inaccessible book. But he's a great philosopher, great writer, existentialist, and all that. But I was very young when I bought this book. Shanbag, I bought it in Shanbag store. He gave me the book without making any comment. I must have been ridiculously young. I must have been 13 or 14 or something like that. And he didn't say anything nasty. He didn't say anything funny. He gave me the book. And I bought it. Of course, you can't read beyond the first sentence. Forget the first paragraph. I think it's one of the world's great inaccessible books. Then, 30 years later, I was in Bangalore. I was then working in Delhi. I came down to Bangalore for something, and Shanbag, when I went to meet Shanbag Story, he called me excitedly, come here, Suresh. I've got another edition of this book. And he gave me a new edition of, and that is the only way he showed his true feelings of my buying that book 30 years earlier.
Okay, sir. Now, before I throw this session open and field questions from the house, a few rapid-fire questions, and you can take your time over it.
Let's not wrap it.
Yeah. Desert island blue. You have been exiled to a desert island for 1 year, and you can carry only one book with you. Which book would that be, and why?
Oh, that's easy. Complete works of William Shakespeare.
Okay, let's assume complete works of Shakespeare is already there. Second book.
That's tough. Perhaps the simple version of the Bhagavad Gita, children's version of the Bhagavad Gita, which I've read. The author is a friend of mine. Some of that is far better explained than some of the more Gitas with commentaries by scholars.
Who would your ideal dining companion be? You have to eat out, either an author or from fiction. Ideal companion to dine out with.
Has Sophia Loren written a book? Yeah, she must have.
Okay.
There's my ideal companion.
Please record this and send a copy to Mrs. Menon. Anybody from fiction?
A writer, perhaps among current writers or anybody. Okay. Yeah, perhaps I will choose a current writer, Pico Iyer. Pico Iyer is an essayist, writer, novelist, and a man who, at some point, decided that he wanted to be a monk. And he lives in Japan with his Japanese wife. He writes beautifully. He writes his sentences. If you want an antithesis to Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness, you read Pico Iyer. The simplicity and the power of simplicity.
And you got him to write on cricket.
And I got him to write on cricket, yes.
Okay. Favorite reading space and favorite reading time?
Reading time, anytime. Whatever, dawn to dusk and beyond either way. Reading space, I would also, I'm not particularly fussed. I suppose I have one of the concessions to my, I suppose, age now, I would call it, is I have one of those lazy boy things where I can stretch out and things. So I do that. I have a lamp here, and I find that, and occasionally when I fall asleep, it doesn't matter.
How wonderful. Books that are on your bedside table right now.
Okay, I have collected essays by Hannah Arendt, the philosopher. Let me think. I've got Lessons, Ian McEwan's latest novel. I've got Wasim Akram's autobiography, which I'm supposed to be reviewing for India today, and some more, at least 3 or 4 more. I'm always reading at least half a dozen books at a time, so yeah.
Fiction and non-fiction. Yes. A book you last recommended to all your friends, which you couldn't stop talking about.
I think P. Goyer's book on living in Japan. I think that's probably the last book I recommended. Sorry? Is that the one? Yeah. But there are 2, 3 different editions, so they have different titles.
One classic which you regret not having read.
Middlemarch. I'm going to read it every other month. I say I must start reading it, which I haven't.
There's a wonderful essay in this book on books that we don't read. We begin with a lot of enthusiasm and vigor, but eventually we give up halfway through.
And that's perfectly legitimate. I used to think when I was younger, I used to think that if you start a book, you should finish it. It's the least you owe. I mean, you owe the writer that kind of respect. I used to think that. But now, if a book doesn't interest you, chuck it. It doesn't matter. Life is too short.
Anti-library. Okay. Favorite cricketer? Tiger or Tendulkar? Because you have written on both.
Neither.
Okay.
Favorite cricketer would be J.R. Vishwanath, I suppose.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. He also wrote his memoirs recently.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Favorite literary stylist? George Orwell, Vladimir Nabokov, Naipaul.
Orwell, I think. Orwell is one of the finest writers never to have won the Nobel Prize because for various reasons. I mean, there's a whole lot of reasons there, political and otherwise. But I think if you read his collected, forget his novels, which are classics in themselves, 1984, Animal Farm, Burmese Days, the whole lot. But for good, sound understanding of the English language, I think you just need to read there's the 4 volumes of his essays, which Penguin brought out many years ago, and they have been republished recently. So I think the essays of George Orwell are crucial.
Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot? Hercule Poirot.
Perhaps Perry Mason? No, I have to answer, so I'll say Holmes. Mainly because I like the atmosphere. I like the handsome cabs and the electric, not electric, the lamps in the streets, that kind of stuff.
You have written on Christie, of course. Cricket writer, Neville Cardus or Gideon High?
Oh, Gideon Haig by a long way. I think Gideon is a marvelous writer. Cardus was important to cricket writing because he raised it to a level of art, literature. But I'm not very sure that Cardus wrote what he saw. Cardus wrote what should have been, and which is fine, which worked, and of course Cardus had, he could write 5,000 word cricket reports on a daily basis. By the time I came into it, I think 1,000 words is about. And now I don't see anything more than 250 words. So it's cricket writing, newspaper cricket writing is, it cannot be literature by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. Favorite book into movie, book adaptation of a movie?
Hours by Michael Cunningham. It's about Virginia Woolf and It's a book within the book itself is a book within a book, and the movie is a book within a book within a movie. It's a fantastic and brilliantly acted and everything. Nicole Kidman won an Oscar for that, yes.
Your wish fulfillment would be holding aloft the Cricket World Cup or the Nobel Prize in Literature?
Or Nobel Prize in Literature. But unfortunately, I can't do either now. When I turned what 40, I think it was, I wrote a long and sad essay saying, now it means I will definitely not play for India. Therefore, I can have chocolates and fried stuff. That was the other part of it.
And your next book, sports or literature?
No, I think I'm working on a book on the Ranji Trophy, which I hope to publish next year, all going well. But I'm also working on a book on golf, which is happening, I think, by the end of March. So it'll be published sometime in September.
So I have come to the end of my questions list. A huge round of applause for this wonderfully erudite scholar. And the world of academia really missed not having somebody like you. But the world of sports gained, this world of sports writing gained. And now I throw this session open to the house. Questions one at a time, please. And please introduce yourself when you ask the question.
Hi, I'm a reader.
Good enough.
So there's this purism in cricket where people want to see the 5-day test match, then they lament the advent of one-day cricket and then the T20. Can you please explain that, and also how much of that metaphor translates into the discussion you had earlier about books versus long-form reading on the internet versus short-form and Twitter?
No, I think we tend to conflate a whole lot of things because it's convenient and it appears obvious. There's no real connection between cricket and long-form essays and that sort of thing, except in terms of time. But to answer your question specifically about cricket, the thing is, cricket has always had this elegiac thing about it ever. There's a book by Walter Hammond, who played cricket in the 20s and 30s, who says that this is the end of cricket. There's nothing more. This 5-day cricket, 3-day county cricket. There's nothing left in cricket. There's nothing interesting left in cricket. I think cricket is dying, and he wrote that 100 years ago. So cricket has always got this this element of we are about to die about the sport. So I don't think there's it's a serious issue. What is a serious issue is that well, certainly personally I would be I'm hoping that Test cricket continues at least for as long as I live, and then of course I have no opinion after that. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I'm a unabashed test match person. My mother, who's 85 years old, is an equally unabashed T20 person. So go figure, as the Americans say.
Hi, sir. Good evening. My name is Kalnamo Chandna. I have grown up hiring books and renting books from a 10 to it, all those, Annette Baton, Nancy Drews, Louis Lemmer, Fountainhead, Ayn Rand and all. And jaldi khatam karna padta tha kyunki ₹1 ka one day ka charge tha, so I used to finish half the book in the school bus, rest in the return and baki sham ka, so that I could return it next day. And I paid about $30 a month, $100. And that was about late 80s. But it's a big challenge. I've got a 90-year-old son. He's okay with his English. The mom is a master a teacher herself with English, is better part of it. But all this SMS language and WhatsApp, Yomo, FOMO, आधा चलता रहता है इनका slang. And when I see sometimes the children making them to write a normal letter, like other day I had to write an application to the passport office. I said, write. तो हम लोग को आदत थी कि write में उधर address, file number ये ना तो हाथ बैठा हुआ है. But it's a big challenge with the present generation. I am slightly inclined with Dr. Saab. Kindle is fine, sir, but हम दोनों को जो क्रॉसरोड में जाके की बुक स्टोर में जो fresh book की smell होती है ना, I think nothing can replace that. I mean, that aura is.
No, I completely understand that, and I completely understand again the fears of language dying out. But again, it's a similar answer to the one I was giving earlier, where the Sumerians who lived whatever thousands of years ago, one of their tablets talks about the same thing: language dying, youngsters not caring enough, youngsters not interested in literature. So I think it's something that's been with us forever, but each generation thinks it's new. It isn't. Historically, it's always been there. If that cheers you up, I don't know if that cheers you up. It may not cheer up a lot of people.
Hi, myself Renad. I have two questions for you, sir. The first is, do you think that ODI as a format should be scrapped because it has become very predictable? And the second question is India winning the 23 World Cup?
Uh, I don't know if ODI as a format should be scrapped because the last ODI that India played, for example, is one of the most exciting matches that was played in the format. So, if it can exist, let it exist or let it die a natural death. We don't have to artificially kill it. A. Will India win the World Cup? If you quote me, I'll deny that having said it. I hope this is not being recorded. But no, I don't think so.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kerman. I wanted to ask you, are you a confirmed non-fiction writer now? Or can we hope to see some fiction in future?
That's good because it's a question I have not been able to answer myself. I would like to write the novel. My great ambition in life was to write the great Indian novel before I turned 30. That didn't happen. And maybe there is still some hope. My good friend Ram Guha thinks that I should be doing writing a novel sometime soon. But I don't know. The honest answer is I don't know. I would love to. I would love to write. I would love to dabble in fiction. Not dabble, I would love to write a serious fiction.
Right. And any plans on writing a memoir?
That's interesting you should ask that. Actually, you're the third person who has asked me this in the last 2
Because
days.
I would love
Is
to
there-
get my
is there-
hands on that.
Is there, this is partly,
This
because it's telling you about one part of me. I mean, not really a memoir, actually. No, yes. No, it's very interesting because there's a part of me which wants to do it, which wants to get down to it and do it straight away. There's also a part of me which is slightly embarrassed. Why would, I've led a fairly ordinary life. Why would people be interested in what I did or didn't do, or unless I can do a kind of memoir where and this is a strange way to write a memoir, where I'm in the background and I talk about things around me. Maybe that will work. Maybe that's the way to go. John Arlott, who was the English commentator and one of the finest cricket writers, he wrote a memoir where he never said I. The word I never appeared, and he spoke about himself in the third person. Of all the books he wrote, that was the most terrible. So I don't even know if that will work.
I'm Ashutosh Paturkar. It's very interesting to hear about Perry Mason after such a long time. And I've read his two novels, Case of Falling Dog as well as Duplicate Daughter. Which one would you recommend and which has been your favorite? Because you preferred him over Holmes, so that's the reason I'm...
No, that was just to pull doctor's leg. No, but the one I liked, from what I can remember, I don't remember a lot now, was a novel called The Case of the Empty Tin. I haven't thought of that in, 30 or 40 years now, so you suddenly brought it back to me.
Could I ask a cricketing question? Is there a question from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Sudhir. How would you emphasize on the role of a publisher in the life of a writer?
Very good. I think the publisher plays an enormous role in the life of a writer, or did. Sorry, let me clarify. Or did until recently, because they decided what books to publish, they decided how to publish them, they decided how to market them, they decided how to sell them, the whole shebang. Now, you can self-publish, which is a huge step. It's a huge step. You can self-publish, and if you can work out, the only catch with self-publishing is the distribution. Now, even that, when I say distribution, this is old-fashioned talk. I'm talking about in the book format. But of course, you can distribute online. And Gideon Haigh, who we just spoke about a little while back, who's a magnificent cricket writer, and can easily find publishers, with his eyes closed. He's written a number of cricket books, one of the most respected writers. Recently, I think about a year back, he published a book. He self-published a book because he says he's sick and tired of publishers. So it depends on how you play it. It depends on what works for you. If I could, okay, in my case, if I could guarantee distribution, I think I might go the self-published way because I'm in complete control of the whole process. Here, in this particular book's case, and some of the earlier books I've written, I had the enormous advantage of having somebody I consider India's finest publisher, V.K. Karthika, to handle my work. So, and she moved from Penguin to HarperCollins to Westland. Suresh Menon also moved from Penguin to HarperCollins to Westland because of her. So if you're lucky enough to find a single person who can support you like that, then you've got it made. But that's very rare. That's very rare. In fact, I don't think another publisher would have taken to this book so easily. As soon as she first of all, she had the idea of doing this book, and once I started writing the initial stuff, everything else worked perfectly between us. So that's pure luck. But publishers do have a huge role to play in a writer's life.
Hi, sir.
Okay, sorry.
As I am a cricket fan, I want to know, in your opinion, who is the best captain of India till now between Saurav Ganguly and MS Dhoni?
The best captain between Saurav Ganguly and MS Dhoni is Anil Kumble.
But if you have to choose,
And I am not joking. I am not joking. This is true. I think Anil Kumble is the finest captain India has produced.
But if you have to choose between these two, then
Tweedledum, Tweedledee. I suppose, okay, the grand compromise. Dhoni for white ball cricket and Saurav for test cricket.
thank you.
That's an Indian answer. Compromising.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I am not a cricket fan.
Good. You're exactly like my wife then.
So that's what is my question. Since you framed that title, it's something that I also use and I have also heard. Why don't you suggest some books or movies that we might watch? So did ma'am finally pick up this book and read?
Oh, she did. I must tell you, yeah, she did, and she enjoyed it, and she hopes that there's another version, another whatever, a sequel.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Afsana Badar. So actually, I wanted to ask, in this age of audiobooks and Kindle and movie adaptations, will the traditional paperback be replaced by all these? Or will they still be as we love them from ever?
The point is, which I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the book, this is just a platform, just another avenue, so to say, to read. So if you read, I have no problems with Kindle. I mean, I have a number of books on my Kindle. I also have a number of books lining my shelves. But the point is, it doesn't matter. The thing to remember is the book. The essence is in the book, not how it is communicated to you. So yeah, if it does, if paperbacks die out, that's progress.
Hi, sir. My question is about women's IPL. It's happening recently. Jai Shah announced that Viacom purchased the right. What is your stand regarding that?
Sorry, say that again.
What is your stand regarding women's IPL happening in India?
IPL happening in India.
Yeah, women's IPL particularly.
I think it's time. I mean, I've been pushing for it right from the beginning. I think it's important to play women's IPL in India, and I'm glad that it's happening. And they've got a terrific television deal. So, yeah.
And I hope in future you might write another book on female cricketer,
I hope so too.
particularly Mithali ma'am.
Yeah, someone's writing a book on Mithali actually.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, it's a follow-up question from the one on publishers. I feel the editor also plays a huge role in how the book shapes out. So what kind of, and if I'm right, you've also been fortunate to have good editors along. So how do you write? I mean, what's your writing creative process? I mean, what kind of role has the editor played? And how have you shaped your writing according to the editing that you know is going to happen?
No, I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should shape your writing according to the editing that you suspect is going to happen. In my case, again, specific example, Kartika was both the publisher and the editor of the book. So she edited line by line. In general, I think we have decent editors, but the problem is they find it difficult to put their foot down with big writers. So if I can't give it, if X writes something that doesn't make sense or shouldn't be, our editors find it difficult to put their foot down and say, no, this can't appear, knock it off or whatever, which is what a good editor should do. I mean, the editor of Hemingway and Fitzgerald, who ran this wonderful publishing, Scribner's there's a book about him, and you see the role he has played in the development and sort of sanity of these two great writers. Yes, but that kind of editor is not easily available now. Is not around now. So there's a movie on that. So now basically you see such editors in the movies.
So I have a question.
Yes, please.
So because it's about writing something that one might want to read, it so happens that sometimes you have a story to tell, but you fear that people might not like it the way you are trying to present it. So do you consider altering your writing style just to suit the interests of the readers, or do you rather prefer keeping it your way?
Personally or generally?
Personally.
No, personally I don't change anything. Personally I write the way I want.
Right.
But in general, a young writer, a writer starting out, might be better advised to follow a professional's advice. Now, if a young writer starting out is told by an editor, this doesn't flow, or this part of it should appear here, or maybe this, we don't need to emphasize so much on this particular aspect, whatever it is, editors will tell you these things. I think it is better to follow that advice. But in general, and especially for early writers, I think it makes sense. But if the writer feels strongly enough and the editor senses that, I think the better class of editor would, work at a happy compromise.
So I take the, Suresh.
Where are you? Yeah,
So
yes, Pawan.
I take the pleasure of asking the last question that can be here in the evening. Okay, you have one? Right. So the moderator has the last question. But so I wanted to ask, silence and reading, writing both are bedfellows. They're needed, the focus and everything else. What has been your relation with silence, and how did you maintain and manage that in a, like you mentioned, that Chennai household where the kid was crying and there was traffic and there was so on and so forth? Or generally, when a reader is reading, how do you start to focus and cut out the noise or the silence? Do you need it or you don't need it?
No, I don't need silence. I had a good training. I was used to writing and working with 100,000 people screaming at Eden Gardens. So I had no problem with one child crying, or couple of cars going by. Is no problem at all. But in general, yes. In general, some writers need peace, quiet. They need to go out, whatever country, or go sit on a beach or whatever to write. And some writers, it doesn't matter to them. In fact, I think if there's too much silence, I might get nervous. So I prefer, in my study, for example, when my son was also living with us, my study also has the television. So if he wanted to watch, sports, or he wanted to watch a movie or something, there was no problem. He'd come and watch the movie or sport or whatever, and I'd be working at my desk. I had no problem. Similarly, exactly the same. Shrehan Karnatilaka, who won the Booker this year, he has a lovely line. He says, he's got two small children. He said, every time my son walks into the room, one paragraph drops out.
Sir, in this long journalistic career, which would be the one goosebump-raising moment which you have witnessed? The one goosebump moment.
I think it's a close finish between meeting and spending a day with Pele or meeting and spending time with Don Bradman.
Sir, please, you can't stop at that.
Or there's one more, or meeting Nelson Mandela and talking cricket. So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I should write about it.
Yeah, please. What was it like, Pele and Don?
Pele was very interesting because I spent a few years in Dubai, and this was in the early period when I just come into Dubai and my books hadn't come in from India, except I had one book with me, a cricket book which I was reading then, and therefore, since I didn't have any other book, Pele signed on the cricket book. So which means that's the only I have the only cricket book in the world which is signed by Pele. But we spent time together, and I received him at the airport because I knew he was coming and I was writing about it. And it was quite amazing because you tend to forget, when you look at people like, Pele and Bradman and Mandela and all the others, there's a part of you which thinks, people have traveled miles. They have waited years to meet somebody like this. Bradman would have, the Australian, if he was traveling by train for a cricket match, every single station along there would be packed with people waiting to meet him, touch him, whatever. And here I was, sitting like this, and so there is something blessed in the profession after all.
What was he like, the Don?
He was extremely nice. Again, the Australian writers told me, no, he's a terrible so-and-so. He'll throw you out of his house, because I went to his house to meet him. He'll throw you out of his house, within seconds. He can't stand journalists, etc., etc. But I went there, and he called me in. We sat there on his long porch, and you can't. I couldn't pretend to be an Indian fan who had come to see him. He knew immediately that I was an Indian journalist. So there was no question of trying to act cute. But he didn't mind that. We sat and spoke cricket. And there's these, I don't know if you've seen them, there's these 2-volume Don Bradman albums. He sat and signed on some 2-3 different pages. So I have a number of his autographs also in that book. He was wonderful. He was really wonderful. I was so excited. I ran down he lived in Adelaide, and there's a bookstore right down the thing, and they had a telephone. So I went there outside. Immediately I called up, my wife and said, listen, I've just met Don Bradman, so I won't be washing my hands for a few years.
Thank you so much, sir. That was absolutely wonderful, and I believe it deserves a standing ovation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you.
And let's hope there are many more books in that wonderful brain of his. And next time, it has to be on sports. Something similar.
Okay.
Right.
But don't quote me.
Everybody, please take a seat, though.
Thank you so much.
Nobody leaves yet. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening carefully and listening so patiently. And sir, if I may say so myself, that I don't know anything about literature or cricket. No. But you're such a dynamic personality, and your sense of humor is top-notch, and everybody's been giggling and having a great time with you. So thank you so much for coming here and engaging with us. So let's come to the it's not the end of the session. I would request our patron Ish Mohan Garg to please come on the stage and present one of a kind painting by Vanshika Ukande from Alag Angle community. Maybe please have them on stage. Yes. So this painting is handmade especially for you, and this young artist has recently, like I think today she made it for you, yes. May I request Supanta sir to please be in the audience so we can, there's a secret that is coming out today, everybody, and I am so glad that you guys are a part of it. A lot of new faces as well, but a lot of old faces as well. So may I please request Hemant Lodha ji, our chairman, to please join Suresh Menon on stage. All right, it is with deep emotion that I say this, that today we are going to unveil something that we've been waiting for a long time, and we've been planning. There are so many people behind the scenes, and today we're going to do it right in front of you. So please consider yourselves lucky because you're a part of a little family. We just got bigger. Let's unveil the new logo of Vidarbha Literary Festival, everybody. Look at that. Our team already exchanged everything. Like, look at the theme. It's going with your cover as well. So with that, yeah, you can sit. So I would request the team to put out a video that shows how the logo was made, especially by a team in Nagpur called Thinking Birds. Yes, that is the date when we have the big, literally Dhamaka festival that's going to happen in Nagpur with a lot of non-fiction writers coming for the very first time to Nagpur. Now, I would request the team to also put out the website that is brand new, created by our very own in-house team member, Abhay Saraf ji. Let's have a huge round of applause for him and his team. No problemo. I just want to say that we have a huge festival coming on 4th and 5th of February. Please remember these dates, cancel all your plans. Okay, because now I'm going to invite Sukhda Chaudhary, who is the brains behind the new theme that is inclusion in action. So please, let's have a huge round of applause for Sukhda.
Thank you, everyone, and so wonderful to see all of you here. Are we going to give it one more shot for the website? Yeah. Yes? So let's try that. Okay, 2 minutes. Until then, I'll take the honor and privilege to tell you about our theme for VLF 2023, which is inclusion. Okay? A small word with a big meaning. They say when you have the tools, don't build a larger wall, build a larger table. Yeah? So that is our rationale behind keeping the theme as inclusion. We completely acknowledge our privilege as people who are capable of coming together to build a literary festival in this great city of Nagpur. And we wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that we give a stage, a voice, and representation to authors, topics of all walks of life. So in VLF 2023, as we reveal the authors in just a bit, I would like to tell you that we have done our very best to make sure that we have representation from all genders, from all classes, from the masses, from the disadvantaged to the advantaged. We have made sure that everybody gets a voice at VLF 2023. It started with our run-up events back in 2022. We had topics like food, tribal history, film. We had so many topics that were so distinct from each other that people would ask us, how did you think of all this? But our mission was very, very simple, that we wanted to bring people and authors that are not the usual mainstream. We wanted to champion them. We wanted to make sure that you get the privilege and the pleasure of listening to the best minds in India on topics that will really make you think. As with the theme, even our moderators will represent the best of this city. In other literary festivals, you might have seen that other authors moderate sessions with the authors, but we have made sure to select readers from Nagpur who will read the book and who will moderate sessions with the authors. The readers come from a wide background of public policy, environment, law, gender studies, engineering, art. So we are so excited to bring that all together for you. The curation process, which was an absolute joy, we reached out to around 200 authors from all over India, and now we have a list of 45 hand-picked people that we are going to reveal for you today. So now, without taking any more of your time, I want to reveal the lineup for Vidarbha Literary Festival 2023, a lineup that promises to make this festival immersive, attentive, inclusive, and festive. Presenting the author lineup for VLF 2023. So thank you very much. Maybe are we going to try the website one last time? They say that perfection is reserved only for God. So, so you must excuse us mere mortals, but let's try the website one more time. And yes, as we try for the website, yeah? Yes, just flipping the screen. 1 minute. Okay, so while we figure that out, just one heads up to all of you. You might have noticed we did not tell you the author names. We introduced them to you through their books. So if something has caught your eye, we want you to visit the website today. Register yourself for February 4th and 5th. And yes, this is the new website for Vidarbha Literary Festival 2023. You will find all the details here. And I would like to give a huge shout out to Jasdeep and Lokesh, our volunteers who worked tirelessly with Abhay to create this website for you. Here you go. If you scroll down, you'll find all the authors that are coming to the festival. You will find all the information about them. And that's the website for you. You will find all details about the festival that is coming up. And now that we have successfully revealed the website, I would just like to take 5 more minutes because I want to introduce some very important people to you. And those are actually the people behind the festival. You know, we don't like to show ourselves except today, and then towards the end, we will be behind the scenes working very hard to give you a wonderful experience. But today, as we have Mr. Menon on stage and Loda sir on stage, we would like to honor the people who are going to make this festival possible by handing over the festival badges to them, and you will be able to recognize them on the venue through these badges. First off, we'd like to invite our patron from Calderas, Mr. Ishmohan Garg on stage, please. It will be a very quick process where we'll just hand over the badges to the people in the VLF team. A big hand to our team, please. So you can just hand it over. You can just hand over the badges. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we move on to the patrons who have made this festival possible through their patronage. I invite Mr. Jitu Nayak on stage, please. Ruta Dharmadhikari ma'am, please, we'd like to have you on stage. Our next patron. Tanveer Mirza sir, next up please. Our patron, one of our many patrons who make this festival possible. Priyanka Kothari, if we could have you on stage please, our patron. Sachin Jagirdar, may we please have you on stage. Thank you. Sachin Jagirdar, yes. Thank you. And now the people, yes, the people who make all the work that goes behind the scenes possible. Next up, we're going to call VLF volunteers on stage. We're going to start with Sarnath. Please join us on stage. They work across and round the clock to make a lot of things possible. Monica, we would like to have you on stage. Monica Dikshit, Harmeet, Maitri, Saili, Anuradha, and Aarti. Please join us on stage one by one to collect your VLF badges, please. These are just 6 of the 110 volunteer team that makes VLF possible this year. So big round of applause for our volunteers. Woo. And lastly, there is a small motley bunch of us who are neither here nor there. We are neither volunteers nor are we patrons, but we like living in the limbo. So I'll call people from the action group who are taking care of certain heads of the festival. Let's start with Vishwaroop, please. Vishwaroop. Okay, Vishwaroop is right there. Yes. Yes. Can we have Preeti on stage, please? Preeti. Rijuta. Arushi. Pawan Sarda, please join us. He is also the festival director. Yeah. Amjad, please join us. Right. Mayank, please. Mrinal. Abhay, please join us on the stage. And Aditi.
And the best and the brightest, Sukhada Chaudhary.
No. We have Aditi coming up. Aditi, and then Mayank, and then Mrinal. That's the spirit of volunteering. Mayank. Mrinal. And Abhay.
And give it up for Sukhada.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful, wonderful feeling to get a badge from Mr. Menon. So moving forward, let's come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for having so much patience and being a part of our little family, which is now so big. I can't wait for 4th and 5th February. So I would like to invite our secretary, Sachin Jagirdar, to please come here and give the vote of thanks. And thank you all for being here. And also, there's a secret discount. I'm not, okay, you can.
Anybody who's representing any sponsor or patron in the audience, please? If at all, I may not know all of them. So, as you have seen, we unveiled the VLF 23 lineup, not the lineup, in fact, the authors. The schedule is still under process and it will be displayed very soon. To present to you this kind of magnitude event, what is the first thing that is required? Bataiye. Or? How's the Josh? अरे पैसा चाहिए तो मुझे भी यही लगता था कि पैसा चाहिए पर पैसा नहीं चाहिए तो any festival of this level, when we conceptualized this way back in 2019, so the first thing naturally comes to our mind that we need a lot of money. And of course, we do need a lot of money. But that's the power of this city, you know. It made that job so simpler and money just flowed in. But do you know that once the festival was underwritten, then we realized that that's not enough. We need something else. We need a company where the money can come in. And we didn't have it. We only had a handful of 25 patrons who's underwritten this festival. There comes our chairman. He comes in and he says that I have already registered NGO. So we run this entire festival under his NGO and thank you Lodha Sahab. So that's why you see that Helpling Charitable Trust, under which this festival is run. The entire accounting and everything done by Lodaji and his team at the Helpling. So we thank Lodaji and Helpling, of course. So then we have some wonderful patrons. Ruta Dharmadikari, ये मेरे को हर महीने मिलने के बाद बोलती है, मुझसे पैसे कब ले रहे हो? अभी तक लिए नहीं आपसे हमने तो हमने क्या किया कि पिछले 20 के होने के बाद 21-22 में we decided as a policy after the pandemic that we'll not take any patron fees from anyone. So what we were looking at was a title sponsor. तो हमको लगा कि ये बहुत बड़ा टास्क है. तो हमारे एक संकट मोचन पेट्रन है जीतू नायक. ये सामने आए इन्होंने बोला कि यार I'll take you to Arun Lakhani ji. He's very cooperative and he's an avid reader and he would like to kind of understand what VLF is. And you know how much time we took to convince the title sponsor? 30 seconds. So that's the magic of Jeetu Nayak. Then people like Tanvir Mirza also came in. Pawan is into multiple roles. Then we have all the partners like Alag Angle you just saw. Then we have the photography team from AD's Photography. And then there are a lot of other sponsors who sponsored us as part of the gold and the silver. These are all mentioned here. Inventis, Dalmia Cement, Calderis. Ishmonji was here, he just left for a meeting. So they all came up. Yes, Bajaj Steel is there. Then these are other partners here. You can see Thinking Birds, the beautiful creatives. Alag Angle, Refuge for the event management. And then there are, as Sukhada was mentioning, that ये ना volunteers हैं ना patrons हैं जो बीच की बहुत बड़ी टीम है जिन्होंने ये पूरा website put up किया और फिर सारा कुछ काम करते हैं उसके अलावा we have for this particular bookmarks we have Anacon. Chinmay, you're here. So Chinmay is here. You will find Anacon Labs as sponsors for the bookmarks. SMS also sponsored for the bookmarks. And then we have Toastmasters here. They have put up their stall outside. On the 4th and 5th also, you'll have about 15 odd stalls in the festival that you will enjoy. Now, just say Arushi was saying that there is a secret discount. So every session we have discount. And why do I have it? That's because we want to build a culture of buying books. I was talking to Suresh in the afternoon that publishers are facing a big trouble by printing and publishing these books. And that's why these festivals play an important role. As I speak to you right now, HarperCollins today is celebrating 30 years in their Indian operations. And you know, where are they hosting this celebration? Any guess? Exactly. They are hosting this celebration party at Jaipur. Why Jaipur? Because JLF is in the process. So JLF is, they have created their own value. And who created this value for JLF? We all, the people. When two things that you can do, buy books and participate. That's what I expect from all of you, your family, your friends. I welcome Hakimuddin Ali. He represents Dalmia Cement. Thank you, sir, for coming in. He's also one of our sponsors. So we, the people, will build VLF as a brand, as a powerhouse of literature festival in Central India. And that's what all other festivals are trying to do. The moment we do this, we become a power hub for this festival. And that is what I expected from all of you in the next 15 days. We all will have sleepless nights for next 15 days, starting tomorrow. And we want you to be a part of this bandwagon. Are you in? And how's the Josh? So today's book is, the MRP is 500 rupees. VLF and Crossword both will put up a discount, and this is available for 350 rupees for the evening. And yeah, during the festival also you'll have some discounts offered from the Crossword side. So keep reading and keep buying books. Thank you very much.
As you heard, that on 4th and 5th of February, we'll have the biggest Dhamaka Literary Festival. Please be there. There are books, there's coffee, there's food, and there's literally everything you need. And there's us. Like, look at us, smiling faces. You'll see us. I'll be in one of the rooms, and you can definitely interact with everybody. So thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you, sir, for coming here to Nagpur and having such a great session with us. And that's about it. Good night, everybody. Have a nice Saturday night. Thank you.
Please buy your books.